Now, once upon a time, our friend Paddy O'Dwyer had been out and into town with his friends, and they'd had a wonderful night. They had drunk and they had danced all night, and in the end, they'd just fallen asleep in a pile in the straw on the side of the inn. And in the morning, they woke up with terribly sore heads. And they only had a small cart with a tired donkey, and it couldn't take them all home. So some of them had to walk and some of them had to ride. And they argued about it and they got on and off and they took their turns. And they were going round a corner and they saw some really most attractive cows. But it wasn't the cows that really drew their eyes. It was these really lovely maidens who were milking the cows, and they felt very thirsty. So they ran down and they asked for some milk. And after they'd had a few glasses of milk, Paddy O'Dwyer said, "Well, now do you have anything to eat at all?" And the maidens said, "Well, if you will come with us to our little cottage, we have a rather nice stew, but, well, friends wanted to be going, and he was more than happy to go to the cottage with them. So off he trekked, and it was a rather out-of-the-way little cottage with a simple turf roof and a great roaring fire in the middle of the room, and on it there was a pot, and they gave him some stew, and they told him to eat as much as he liked, but they must just wander off for a little bit, and he should stay, and if he felt like it, there was he could just lie down and sleep in the corner. Well, he ate his stew, and then he rather fancied that he'd like to see these maidens again, and he had an awfully sore head, so he thought he'd just lie down and have a little nap. But little naps, especially in such places as that, quite often turn into long naps. And he was woken up when he heard some voices outside, and they weren't voices he recalled, and they didn't sound like friendly voices. So he sort of went and hid behind the only item of furniture in the room. And then these two great red bearded men came in, and they were carrying a corpse, and they stripped the corpse, and they inserted a long, sharp iron rod up the corpse's bottom, and they banged it through until the end came out of the mouth, and then they put it on the fire. And then they started to have an argument as to who was to turn the spit. "It's got to keep turning," said one of them. "It doesn't turn, it'll burn, and there's nothing I like less than burnt flesh. But I'm damned if I'm going to stand here and turn and turn and turn. You're damned anyway." "Well, that's hardly the point. I know. Paddy O'Dwyer, you come out from under there and you start turning this spit." Well, Paddy O'Dwyer knew when he had to do what he was told, and he came and he started turning the spit. "Now, Paddy, you keep turning, don't stop for one instant. It's not cooked right the way through, or if it's burnt, well, I don't like my flesh to be spoilt, so we'll throw that particular body in the fire, and then we'll shove this spike up your bottom and we'll cook you too." Well, Paddy O'Dwyer started turning. We'll be back now, but you keep turning that spit." He turned it until he thought they'd probably gone a safe distance, and then he sneaked to the door. But, well, when he looked out at the door, it was awfully dark and awfully black, and he thought it was quite possible that these people could see in the dark, and he didn't fancy being eaten himself, so went back and turned and turned. Well, finally they came back, and they looked, at it. Oh, absolutely delicious, absolutely perfect. Well done, Paddy O'Dwyer. You are the master chef of the world. It's not perfect at all. It's a little bit burnt. You've ruined it, Paddy O'Dwyer. We're going to eat you now. No, it's delicious. Let's just try this. Isn't this delicious? No, it's not delicious. It's just a little bit overcooked. I don't like it overcooked. You know, I like it cooked. Yes, but look, if we just cut the liver out, the liver, it's perfect. Well, the liver is quite nice, but it's not. Ooh, I'll have another slice of that liver. Oh, there's nothing like the liver. Well, I don't think it's cooked properly, but all right, we'll eat it, and we won't eat Paddy O'Dwyer. Paddy O'Dwyer, you tell us a story while we're eating. But Paddy O'Dwyer didn't somehow manage to come up with any words. So they picked Paddy O'Dwyer up and they kicked him out of the cottage. But it was a black night and a terrifying night. And Paddy O'Dwyer thought he caught a glimpse of something he really didn't like. Well, there was nothing for it. He went back and banged on the door and said, I thought of a story. Come in then. It's the story of something that happened to my cousin, Paddy O'Dwyer, before I was born. Now, Paddy lived on a small farm. It wasn't much, and he wasn't very good at farming, but he was good at dreaming. And one night, he dreamt that just behind the ancient yew, if he dug deep enough, he'd find a chamber, and that chamber would be full of gold. Well, he didn't want to go digging during the daytime because he didn't want anyone to see what he was doing and come and ask any questions. And he certainly didn't want to have to share any of the gold, if there was gold. So on the first full moon, he took a flask of holy water and a spade, and he made a circle around the spot, and he started to dig. And he dug down into the earth until his spade hit a great slab of stone. And as he was clearing this slab, good evening, Paddy O'Dwyer, said the voice. And he looked around and he looked up, and he saw a very, very elegant and beautiful greyhound looking down at him. God and Mary and Patrick be with you, said Paddy. A beautiful evening it is. Now, when his new friend had failed to invoke the Almighty in his greeting, Paddy O'Dwyer should perhaps have been aware that he served a different master. But Paddy O'Dwyer was not thinking too fast, but he did know that perhaps it was not the best of omens. And they had a little chat. And then the greyhound asked, whose grave are you digging here? I'm not digging a grave. Well, what are you doing? I'm just digging a hole. I know exactly what you're doing, and I know what's underneath that slab of stone. Now then, Paddy O'Dwyer, you get out of that hole and you come and sit here beside me, and I'll tell you all about it. Now, Paddy O'Dwyer felt that as all had been civil so far, he did not want to start an argument, and that he best do as the stranger required for now. So he got out of the hole. But no sooner had he crossed the ring of holy water than the greyhound bit him on the bottom, and he started to run, and the greyhound kept biting his bottom until he got home and slammed the door. But Paddy O'Dwyer now knew that there was gold down there. Now, Paddy O'Dwyer had never been a very good farmer, and he didn't want to work very hard now, knowing that there was that gold, but he didn't really want to go and do the digging. But finally he ran out of potatoes, and he felt that he would rather go and brave that hole. So at the next full moon, he took his flagon of holy water, and he took his spade, and he got a digging. He hadn't been digging too long before his old friend appeared and said, Paddy O'Dwyer, will you stop digging? What is it that you want? I want gold. Well, if that's all you want, let me get you some. How much gold do you want? I want a case this big. Now, Paddy O'Dwyer, think about it. If I brought you a case that big, you wouldn't be able to carry it. You certainly wouldn't be able to run with it if I were to give you a bite. And also, you'd never be able to spend it. Well, what about a case this size? You should manage that. And the greyhound came back a little while later with the case. Come and get it. But Paddy O'Dwyer wasn't going to be a fool twice. He said, no, you push it over here, push it over the circle. And the greyhound pushed it over the circle. And he opened it, and his hands were filled with the most beautiful gold, more gold than he'd ever need in his life. But he wasn't going to get out of the circle, not until the greyhound left. And the greyhound didn't show any sign of leaving, but nor did Paddy O'Dwyer. He waited until the dawn began to break and the greyhound vanished. And then he went home with great joy, laughing. And he woke up his wife, Mary, and he said, we'll never work again. We're rich, Mary. We are rich, rich, rich. But he opened the chest, and there was nothing in it but old bones. And his wife, Mary, said, you're a fool, Paddy O'Dwyer. It wasn't the first time she'd said that. And for sure it was not the last. Well, it wasn't too frightening, Paddy O'Dwyer thought that time. So the next full moon he was back there, and he made his circle. And he dug down, and the greyhound said, don't go down there. And Paddy O'Dwyer said, bugger off. And he raised the great stone door, and there was a beautiful staircase. He went down, down, down into the bowels of the earth, and he came to a great golden door. And he opened this great golden door, and he beheld the beauty of the world. That is, if gold and jewels is your definition of beauty. They were everywhere. And he went in, and his eye just gleamed. And then he saw the most beautiful women he'd ever seen, with long red hair and not wearing that many clothes. And the most beautiful woman of them all came out, and she smiled at him, and she fluttered her eyelids. But Paddy O'Dwyer wasn't looking at her eyelids. He was looking at her two nipples that were pressing against the translucent silk, and he was looking at her beautiful breasts. And when she said, will you have a drink with me, Paddy O'Dwyer? He held out his hand, and he took the golden goblet, and he put it to his lips. And as we all know, and as Paddy O'Dwyer knew, one must always be careful of gifts. For no sooner had he drunk of the liquid than the beautiful girls shrank down in size until they were about so high. And he realized it was a gang of the good people, and they were not pleased to see him. They seized him by his arms and legs, and they dragged him up the staircase. They dragged him off to the top of the nearby cliff, and they threw him down over it, and he was smashed to smithereens. And the next day his body was found, and he did not live happily ever after.